Hey there, everybody. This is Chris Vanini with Dan Kilbridge for the second episode of the Spartan Tailgate podcast. Reviews seem to be positive from you guys, so we figured we'd keep this going as long as you guys still want it going. Dan, how you doing?
Doing well, Christopher. No intro music for us yet?
No, I was actually on the Black Harkle podcast recently, and they're so good at those songs, and I don't even know what we would do. It just wouldn't even be fair. But and I'm sure people want to get right into the nitty gritty, talking about Michigan State as we continue on through fall camp. We're recording this on Thursday, August 14th. This will go up on Friday, the 15th, my birthday. So hopefully.
Oh, there you go.
So I know a lot of you guys wanted the audio version of it. I posted it later on in the thread last week. Still working out some better ways to do it. I don't know if it's going to be able to be on iTunes, but I'm going to try to post a way you guys can download it on your phones and whatnot to listen to on drives and commutes and stuff like that, because it seemed like something you guys wanted. So and also if you guys have any more tips on how better ways to do that and whatnot, let us know. Didn't get any questions from you guys for this podcast. Just a reminder, if you guys have any questions about anything, just let us know and we'll try to hit it in the next one. So with that, we'll start back to where we left off last week. There was a scrimmage last week. The offense came away with a 47-30 win in the modified scoring system. Winning, losing isn't that big a deal, but I thought it was notable that Mark D'Antonio considered it the best an offense has ever opened in a scrimmage for him. I think the belief seems to be that the offense is probably ahead of the defense at this point in the year just because of how many guys are coming back. But Dan, were you surprised at how seemingly one-sided it was?
Not really. I mean, just for the reasons you mentioned, a lot of returners on offense, and the defense still figuring some things out. But I guess we don't know how one-sided it really was. I mean, the numbers look kind of ridiculous in terms of like passing yards. The offense combined for 756 passing yards. Don't know how much of that was on the first string or the second string, but from what Pat Narduzzi and other guys were saying this week, really seems to me that a lot of those big plays came later against some of the backups. So maybe depth right now in the defensive backfield, not where Narduzzi wants it to be. I think that was kind of his big theme on Tuesday when he met with us, was that, Monday. He said that he thought they needed to work on some guys in those backup roles, but very pleased with the first string defense. And from what D'Antonio said, MSU had a lot of trouble running the ball against this defense, so that's a positive sign in terms of those linebackers stepping into a starting role. I think that points to a good start for them, and really some interesting individual numbers, I guess, but you've got to take everything with a huge grain of salt with these scrimmages, and it's hard to say exactly what happened. But, yeah, big takeaways. Offense is feeling very good about where it is right now. D'Antonio keeps mentioning the quarterbacks, and also the defense. First stringers playing well. Got some work to do beyond that.
You mentioned those individual numbers, and probably the biggest story coming out of the scrimmage, at least online, was DeAnthony Arnett with 8 catches, 167 yards, and two touchdowns. And like you said, the stats, not a huge thing, but he was a guy that, from what I read, the players seem to be raving about how he played. I know he's a guy who, he came from Tennessee, and people expected him to do more right away, and he hasn't. And based on conversations you had, what did you take away from what people seem to think of how he's looking?
Well, the key word there was he was the big story online, and it seems to me like DeAnthony Arnett has ruled the internet since transferring from Tennessee, but it's certainly a good sign for him. Now, I want to remind people that DeAnthony Arnett had 2 touchdown catches in a scrimmage last fall as well. ended up redshirting that year. So you don't want to look at it and say, oh, he's arrived, but you don't want to totally dismiss it either, because that wouldn't be fair, and I don't think it would be necessarily correct given what we heard from Arnett's teammates. I mean, they were saying he went bananas, he balled out, were a couple of things said about him, and he seems a little more comfortable in the offense now, knowing where to be, can play more than one position, which is huge for a guy in this system. And I think of the second tier guys, okay, I'm going to separate right now Aaron Burbridge, Keith Mumphrey, McGarrett Kings, and maybe R.J. Shelton as well as kind of the top four guys. Maybe Shelton a little on the edge there, but those three certainly, along with Tony Lippett, who I totally forgot there, but Tony Lippett is right there at the top as well. So really they've got those four guys. But among the second tier guys, we're talking about Shelton, AJ Troop, Andre Sims, even a couple of surprise guys, maybe Matt Maxud, whoever it might be. I think Arnett is clearly leading in that second tier right now and has a good shot to come out at least near the top of that group, and maybe more this season. Who knows? But I do think that he, by all accounts, he's done better, and we'll just wait and see if that translates to something real once they're playing a different colored jersey.
And there's only so much ball to go around. You listed a lot of guys there who can play, and it's a good thing to have that much depth. But how much can you expect from any one guy outside of maybe Lippett? They may not have great numbers overall, but he seems like a guy who's moving closer to being able to contribute. So we'll see how that goes moving forward.
They're gonna have some talented guys not playing all that much. I mean, there's just some good numbers at receiver right now.
Yeah, and so moving on, earlier in this week, Big Ten Network was in town. MSU had to move practice from the practice field out to Munn Field where the band is because of some pipe leaks and whatnot. Big Ten Network was there. Dave Revson kind of caused a little storm when he mentioned that Riley Bulla was running with the ones. Pat Narduzzi later said that Bulla was the 2. He also said that he feels very comfortable with Tawan Jones and John Reschke in the middle, but still kind of shuffling things around there. What did you take away from the linebacker position?
First of all, I want to go back to the burst pipe that forced the team to the band practice field. There were a few posters on the Red Cedar message board who were very concerned that it was a recruiting pipeline that had burst, and they had lost a major pipeline from an in-state school. So they were very relieved that it was actually just structural damage elsewhere. So, again, like you said, Big Ten Network tweeted out a group of linebackers that did not include Darian Harris, and I wrote a story on it because I felt like we don't get to see practice every day. We don't get to report on what happens in practice every day. So if on one specific day one group is going to be allowed to do it, then I am going to take what they say and write on it if it's significant news, just because we don't get to see that. So I thought that was at least pointed in the direction that if nothing else, Riley Bulla is playing very well this spring. He's gone a lot with the ones, mostly in situational things. I think right now the starting group is still Ed Davis at the money. It used to be called the Sam. Now they've changed it to the money, so that's the strong side. Ed Davis there. Darian Harris at the star, and Tawan Jones in the middle. Jones seems to have done pretty much what the coaches have asked him to do in running that spot in the middle. I don't think he's been perfect. I know he's still working on a few of the calls and sort of feeling comfortable there. But it seems to me like, if they've left him in there for going on 2 weeks now, I think they're comfortable with him, and I think he'll be the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've been told that maybe MSU keeps it more vanilla when Big Ten Network comes around, just because never want to give away too much, and
no.
But it's a good look into. I like their tour, going to every school. To get some interesting tidbits. Jared DiNardo was raving about how MSU looks, especially up front, and so positive experience, I think, from Big Ten Network. So It's always fun to watch.
And bad timing for that tour heading to Northwestern right after
Yeah.
they lose Christian Jones and
Well,
Venrick.
and not only that, they were at Purdue yesterday, and that happened to be a day that Purdue was having a
A
practice.
road practice. That's where you wrote about that, right?
Yeah, off campus in Rensselaer, or I don't know how to pronounce it, somewhere else in Indiana, and something that Purdue had planned back in March. So kind of
I'm sure a lot of character was built that afternoon.
But yeah, no, cool thing that BTN does. So yeah, moving on, another big player being hyped up this week has been Lawrence Thomas, who drew heavy praise from Narduzzi earlier in the week, and then even more praise from Pat Narduzzi on BTN, where he compared him to a Jerel Worthy type disruptor in the middle there, which is something MSU has missed since Jerel Worthy. Who we'll get to Worthy later, actually, about his NFL career. But LT is a guy who's had injuries. They've tried to get him on the field in different ways. With Damon Knox's injury, this seemed like an opportunity for him to really step up, and so far it sounds like he has.
And yeah, he's taken that role and he's really run with it. And for Pat Narduzzi to say that to me is significant, not because of what he said so much as the fact that Narduzzi seems to be the most honest of the coaches in terms of player evaluation and where guys are at. You don't really hear him talking up guys that later go on to make a big impact that season. And to bring out the Jerel Worthy comparison, nonetheless, you don't hear that from him every day. So you're right. Michigan State hasn't had that. Micajah Reynolds and Tyler Hoover were very good players, but very different players, not necessarily the go and blow up an entire play by themselves type of guys. They more just did their job. But, yeah, I mean, LT, he's athletic. I mean, he was a great linebacker in high school, put on some weight, obviously. But, man, if he's got it going, that's big.
Another guy that Dave Revson pointed out was Josiah Price at tight end, sophomore, who came on toward the end of the year last year. Revson called him a matchup nightmare, and it's a position that last year was completely unknown, even the last 2 years when Deion Sims was hurt. Completely unknown. Price is a guy who's come on. You wrote about Jamal Lyles this week, and how's he looking?
He's looking well. Again, we don't get to see much of practice, so
I should phrase. Let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
How does it sound like he's doing based on what coaches and players have been saying?
Well, that's a very good question, Chris. I think that number one, it was about the blocking for him all off season, pretty much. I mean, he showed early on last season that he has ability as a receiver, but you can't play as a tight end without being able to block, because then you tip your hand every time, and you're just not going to get the job done doing it that way. So what he had to do was dedicate himself toward becoming an all-around tight end so he could make the best use of those skills as a receiver. Sounds like he's done it. Curtis Drummond said he's given guys a lot more problems. Jim Bowman's been high on him. And you think about him and Josiah Price together, what they could do. It's got to be a scary thought for opposing defensive coordinators, because not only do you have some talent at receiver, now you've got two tight ends. You can go two tights with both of those guys, and they're comfortable on the line or split out as good receiving threats. That could do a whole lot for this offense. So if Lyles does what people think he might do, I really think that brings something incredibly different to the offense that we haven't seen since, the Gant, Linthicum, Sims days.
He hit a couple really, really nice catches last year.
Yeah.
Didn't do a ton, but when he made a play, you noticed him out there.
Right. It was just he just couldn't be relied on as a blocker, so you can't play him. But yeah, he's clearly got the physical tools, and this year I think might be his time.
We talked quite a bit about the offensive line last week. Mark Staten, they've put more of an emphasis on rotating guys in and out, and that keeps guys fresh. And the starting five of Conklin, Jackson, Allen, Cruz, and Clark seems to be pretty set. and then you look at some of the backup guys like Benny McGowan, Dennis Finley, Miguel Machado. They want to get. State was saying he'd love to get. You'd love to have 10 guys and make like a hockey line change.
Sure.
They seem to be at about 6, 7 where they're at right now. Brian Allen, another guy kind of in there in the mix. How does it sound like that line depth has been developing?
It's been developing well, and I think they are very close to calling what you just laid out their starting 5, but they're going to wait around for Cody Keeler for one more scrimmage, and I think Monday they will say, okay, this is our starting 5, but they're going to wait and see what Keeler is capable of on Friday, because that if you put him in at tackle, you can do a lot of different things. You can shift Donovan Clark into the guard spot. You can even put Connor Cruz at center and bring Jack out for a breather if he needs to come out. I mean, there's a lot of different things to do. So Mark Staten said he kind of talked to Cody Keeler before practice on Thursday and said, hey, right now you're safe. You're in the 6-7 playing group. You're right there. But do you want to be in the first 5? I mean, that's kind of what he challenged him to do at practice today, and it'll be interesting to see how he does with that. But aside from him, yeah, Brian Allen I really think will play this year. I've said that since the summer, and I know it sounds rare, but I think they believe he can be a starter next year. I think he thinks he could be a starter next year, so they're going to groom him and get him in the rotation. I've heard nothing but great things about him. And then it's the guys you mentioned, Machado, seems to have made a strong push to get in that playing group, but because he's got 3 years to play 2 seasons, they could redshirt him if they want to save that depth, and maybe 2016 comes around and you're thanking yourself for that. Benny McGowan and Dennis Finley, I'd say, are improving. I don't think they're necessarily where MSU wants them to be totally, but they've been pleased with what they've done this camp, and I think those 2 guys have a lot to prove on Friday, just in terms of saying, hey, I belong in the playing group this year.
Yeah, you mentioned Keeler. He's a guy who can move around. So they seem to have 6 real solid guys.
Yes, and I would almost say 7 with Brian Allen.
It's kind of hard, especially for a true freshman offensive lineman. You saw what happened with Michigan last year. It's just a really hard thing to do to get used to playing guys. A lot of guys, they're not used to playing guys bigger and stronger than them. But he's a guy who's a wrestler like Jack, and
competed against good players in high school too.
So maybe that helps that adjustment. But,
I think it does.
It seems like maybe 6.5 they got right now, and you'd like to get 2 guys maybe in there, depending on how the other guys develop. So you mentioned Keeler in the next scrimmage, which has been moved up to Friday. Is there anything you think MSU is looking to settle in this? Second scrimmage seems to be the one where they really determine who's kind of getting in the rotation for all positions.
No, definitely. They're going to look at, I think, the freshmen at a certain point, because you can't, even if a guy is very talented and has shown you a lot, you can't wait around forever. And so at a certain point, the bus just sort of leaves, and then you can get on it as a scout team member, but you're not going to be brought along and given the reps that you were given early in fall camp to prove that you belong there. And it's kind of wait until next year, you'll have another chance. So this is really big for those freshmen looking to prove they belong, and it's big for some guys fighting for backup spots. Mylan Hicks, I didn't touch on him when we talked about the linebacker spot, but they seem pretty happy with what he's done at Star this camp, and could be a guy like Jarius Jones was before he got hurt last year, coming in on 3rd and long and really adding something, because he's he's playing the linebacker spot and he's got defensive back speed. So I think he could be a guy. And then in terms of starting roles, I mean, who knows if Riley Bola doesn't go and have another great scrimmage if the staff maybe goes, well, do we take another look at this? But it's sort of next week is when the focus starts to move toward Jacksonville State, and the evaluation period, which is always ongoing, just starts to slow down quite a bit as they focus elsewhere.
And you mentioned freshman. I think Madre London's another guy who is going to be right there on whether or not he plays. Dave Revson tweeted that he was running with the twos. London's was the only running back stats we were given from the last scrimmage. So I think he's a guy who has a chance to put himself in that rotation, especially since they want to get guys not named Jeremy Langford.
Yeah, he definitely sounds like a guy. I mean, it's surprising because with Hill, Williams, and Holmes, we talked a lot about that last week. But yeah, I think he's definitely got a shot.
So now we kind of move on to non-current MSU topics. I guess we'll start off.
I just heard about 100 people turned this podcast.
Well, this is where we get to Jerel Worthy, who a couple days ago it was tweeted he was going to be traded to the Patriots pending passing a physical. He's been pretty banged up throughout his NFL career. He played 14 games his first year with Green Bay after being a second-round pick. He played defensive end in a 3-4 scheme, which always seemed kind of uncomfortable with him. But Worthy, he has not, from what I've read, he has not practiced so far in training camp because of a lower back injury, and he couldn't pass his physical in Green Bay and was on the non-football injury list. So that's why it was pending a physical for him to be traded to the Patriots. Last I saw, he was at practice, standing around in New England, so it appears that went through, although the team hasn't announced it, so it's possible it might not happen. But this seems like it might be kind of the last chance for Jerel. He was traded for a late round pick to the Patriots. He has, like I say, he hasn't been healthy. He hasn't fit into that 3-4 defensive end scheme because he was put there because he was kind of a pass rusher type. But you know, if you play tackle in the NFL, you kind of got to be a run guy. And he was sometimes hit and miss on that. The Patriots, I know, mix things up a lot more than Green Bay did, so maybe there's some 4-3 packages New England might have for him. I guess we'll see how that kind of goes. Dan, you got any thoughts on Jerel?
Yeah, basically, it's kind of the sad reality of the NFL that this is the last chance for a guy like Jerel Worthy, who hasn't been able to prove himself yet because of injury. It's not any fault of his own, but again, when you are coming into the league as a rookie, there's so few roster spots, there's so little time, and if you're hurt, you're just sort of out of the mix. You're not around. And he tore his ACL and missed, pretty much all of last season because of it. Played some in 2012 and looked all right. And then he has the bizarre back injury. It was a lifting injury when he tweaked his lower back. Thought he was going to be out only 2 months. That turned into 4 months, and now he's still waiting around. I mean, hey, Bill Belichick has turned guys around before, and that's not to say Jerel needs to be turned around. Maybe he just needs to stay healthy. But, yeah, I mean, it's certainly not a bad place to land on your feet, and we'll see if he can get healthy and make an impact at some point here.
Yeah, probably only a couple of weeks left for him to try to make that. He's got to get on the field first,
right,
and foremost. And even then, it sounds like it's a pretty big long shot, but it's another chance, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah.
Other MSU NFL folks news, Hoyer Mania continues to run wild in Cleveland. He was up here in Detroit against the Lions last week for their first preseason game. I think he was 6 for 14. He had a good drive. A ball was dropped in the end zone. But overall, not great numbers. Johnny Manziel came in, had a couple nice plays, but again, it's against the second teamers. They seem to be pretty close to neck and neck in camp right now, and I imagine if that's the case, the edge goes to Hoyer. Do you think
See,
Dan,
I think
what do you think?
I think you could look at that the other way almost and say if it's a tie, you're going to go with your franchise quarterback and just get him started. And I think that I don't know. I mean, I don't like Manziel's chances as a long-term successful NFL quarterback. I don't think he translates well to this league particularly, and I've defended that point beyond reason at several points with several different people. But yeah, so I think if it is a tie, I do think they will play Manziel because of public pressure and just the fact that he's their younger guy and he's their guy. So Hoyer really has to be a step above Manziel, in my opinion, to win the job. And you just feel for him because last year he's playing well. He's got the hometown game in prime time and hurts himself, doesn't come back. You kind of wonder how different things would be for him or maybe even the Browns draft if he has a great year after that. But you'll never know. And so I do think it shocks me. I thought going into camp that Hoyer would really take control because of his grasp of the system. And you see Manziel, I think it's funny that now it's being reported that he's late to a meeting. That's like a big story, but it's sort of the boy who cried wolf. When you've built this reputation, those sorts of stories will follow. And right now, it just sounds to me like they like Manziel, and he's going to be their starter.
I think it comes down to who's kind of making that call. If it comes down to the coach, Mike Pettin seems like the kind of guy who'd rather go the safe route. I'm sure ownership is going to want to get Manziel out there. Colin Coward said Manziel should start because of his jersey sales, which I don't know what the hell that has to do with anything.
Well, yeah, sure. Well, absolutely.
But
that makes total sense.
It sounded like in camp early on that it was a battle between two guys who really were playing well. And after the first preseason game, it seems like it's two guys who aren't playing very well. And now it's who's maybe the less worse option. If I'm the Browns, I give Hoyer the first. I know they have an early bye. I don't know what week it is. I give Hoyer the first few, see if he gets something going, and if he doesn't, Manziel's got a couple of real NFL games under his belt from the sidelines, seeing how all the game day stuff works, and then go from there. As for whether or not he can make it, I know you didn't seem fond of that. I think the biggest concern, I'm not concerned with his arm strength. From what I've seen, which I actually thought I would be, but he's got a bigger arm than it looks. To me, it's his maybe fragileness. I know he got popped pretty hard in the preseason game against the Lions, but he came back. He was fine. But he is a small guy, and if you're going to run, that's going to happen. And it's kind of the same thing said with every running quarterback, and it almost seems like every running quarterback.
I mean, look at Robert. It's not so much. Yeah, Robert Griffin. I was going to say.
RG3, Mike Vick, Denard Robinson, Braxton Miller. I mean, he's not running read option, but when the longer you have the ball, the more likely you're going to get hit, and he is a diminutive player.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, and we'll see. I've got a few bets on there long term regarding his career outcomes, so we'll just sort of see how that plays out.
Elsewhere, not really a topic, but I've heard Darqueze Dennard is doing really well in Cincinnati, which I don't think would surprise anybody on the MSU side of things. Seemed like a good fit for him. I didn't see him at all in his first preseason game, but I've read quotes from Marvin Lewis, who's been very pleased with him. And last I had read, Isaiah Lewis was also better than they had expected. I'm not sure his chances of making the team, but those are two positive signs for some MSU players. You got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to see every once in a while, at least, positive play at the college level translate to the NFL. Like with Dennard, you see so many guys, talking about Worthy on the field every Saturday. He looks like a stud, and then he gets into camp, and it's just not the same. Good to see Dennard playing like we all know he can. And Isaiah Lewis, if he were just a little bit bigger, I think there'd be a lot of teams really interested. Because I think he's a heck of a player. I do, and we'll see if he makes it.
And our last sports-related topic, it looks like MSU and Michigan hockey are going to play at Soldier Field in February in the Hockey City Classic. It's part of a doubleheader with Miami of Ohio against Western Michigan. This will be the fourth outdoor game between these two. They tied in East Lansing in 2001. Michigan blew them out in Ann Arbor in 2010. And last year, MSU got a win in the third place game of the GLI at Comerica Park. So consider this the 1-1-1 tiebreaker. But, Mark Hollis really wanted that Chicago market when they were splitting the Big Ten divisions up, and this is an example of why, because it's such a Big Ten town, especially for Michigan State. As for the crowd, I'm not expecting a whole lot. I know they played here, I think 2 years ago, maybe last year. It was Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Notre Dame, Miami of Ohio. Those are three schools there with big either alumni bases or fan bases. I think it said they drew about 50,000. It didn't look like that much on TV. I wouldn't expect a whole lot, but Dan, you're a Chicago guy. Is this something you would try to get out to?
Yeah, I mean, if I was in the area, certainly, but I wouldn't drive 4 hours from East Lansing to make the trip. And there's some state fans in the market. I think the state game will draw pretty well. It's just a matter of the other game, like you mentioned, it's going to be a problem. I also love that it's called in a subtle jab at the Red Wings, it's called the Hockey City Classic, which apparently is Chicago's Hockey City, and you guys are Hockey Town. Is that right?
Less of a jab than Hockey Town. I know they've been that for a while.
Yeah, we're done with that now. We're off that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The outdoor hockey game's cool and everything. It just seems like the NHL took it way over the top last year with like 5 games. They won in Anaheim. As you mentioned, they're doing this every year. Now, I think it's kind of played out, but I don't know. What I tell you what. Mark Hollis had previously talked about that I would much rather see than this. He one time floated out the idea of trying to do the Big Ten baseball tournament at Wrigley.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I think that's a home run, pardon the pun.
Nice.
But yeah, nailed it there. But I do think that'd be something cool to watch. As for the outdoor college hockey, it's not my favorite thing. I like the atmospheres at Mon or Yost or whatever it may be. I don't think there's any need to put it outdoors anymore.
Yeah, I'm a mixed on that, because outdoor for the colleges and the small teams, I think they've hit a limit there. I don't think they sold out at Minnesota last year, which is a 50,000 seat stadium. But if
you can't do it in Minnesota, you're not going to be able to do it anywhere,
Wisconsin, I know, played a home game against Michigan a while back. That wasn't a sellout. I think you've hit the limit there on places like that. I will say, though, in the NHL, they don't interest me as much as they did, but I'm pretty sure every single Stadium Series game they did last year sold out, including 2 different ones at Yankee Stadium. So that tells me, at least in some of those markets, that the interest is still high. So I don't blame the NHL for continuing that. I don't even know what the Winter Classic is this year. Is it DC? I think it's DC at Nationals Park.
Yeah, okay. And I don't blame the NHL for ever accepting money, so yeah, I'm okay with that.
But yeah, I mean, it seems at least in the pro level there is enough interest still, but I do think we're kind of hitting the edge. I mean, It's fun to look at there's a Wikipedia page for a list of outdoor hockey games, and it's fun to just count year by year and just see how much it has just completely exploded. And you just got minor league teams and high schools and just all over the place. And it's fun. It's novel. If you haven't done it, it's fine. But I know Minnesota has now done 3 outdoor games in just the past few years. I think everybody's kind of hit their limit on that.
Yeah. Just like I think we've hit our limit on the topic.
Yes, and that leads us to our last topic, which is not sports related, but the tragic death of actor comedian Robin Williams. He's a guy who grew up in Bloomfield Hills, went to Country Day for a little bit. As someone who grew up in the 90s, I have a couple of what I consider voices of my childhood, and he was certainly one of them, with Aladdin, Mrs. Doubtfire, Hook, Flubber, Good Will Hunting, Dead Poet Society. I never saw a movie that I don't think I enjoyed that he was in. Even something like 1 Hour Photo, and it's just a sad situation. dealing with depression and everything. When you look back on him, Dan, what are your favorite memories, favorite moments, movies of his?
Shit, there's so many, and yeah, it's just too bad what happened. You just think of all the great movies he made, and just know that he was struggling very, very much so recently. But I think back, yeah, I actually had the opportunity to see him at the MSU auditorium
I
a
was
couple
there.
of years
That was there
ago.
too.
Were
Yeah.
ya? Dude, do you remember how much water he drank on stage?
Oh, that was a lot. He sweats a lot. I remember he did a show. I've got a DVD of his from, I think it was in New York, and he's got like 20 water bottles on
Yeah,
the table.
and he uses them all. Like I swear to God, he drinks like 12 of them, and then the other 8 he like dumps on his body throughout the
Yeah,
entire.
he does throw them throughout the bit.
Yeah, no, that was great, and I just think a versatile guy. I mean, who can pull off, Mrs. Doubtfire, doing the hot dog impression and stuff like that, and then pull off Goodwill Hunting with just one of the best performances I can remember. I mean, I've seen that movie 100 times. It's he's unbelievable, and yeah, it's just too bad.
And like you mentioned, he wasn't just like a comedian who got into movies. He was in Juilliard with Christopher Reeve, and he was a very accomplished young actor. And in his friendship with Christopher Reeve, growing up and before and after Christopher Reeve's accident, is just very inspiring to follow. So, I mean, it's just a guy that brought so much joy to everybody. And I believe he's got 4 movies that are still set to come out, obviously after his death, including Night at the Museum 3. I think it's 3.
Love Night at the Museum series. Yes.
He's great in that. I know they were planning to do a Mrs. Doubtfire 2. I assume that's off the shelf now. But so there's still opportunities to see him in new things coming up, which will be. I know some people, might not want to because of what happened. To me, I look at it as another opportunity to go see a guy who was an important part of my childhood. So just a sad situation overall. Another national conversation about mental health, which I think is important. So hopefully, people can talk more openly about depression and come through and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
I guess we're ending on a pretty sad note here.
Yes, yeah, but if you made it this far, hopefully you take some joy out of remembering what we brought up. But that's going to wrap it up for the second episode of the Spartan Tailgate podcast. Again, if you have any questions on any topic you want us to hit, let us know. We'll try to hit them next week. Try to do this at the same time. Keep this going as long as you guys still want it going. So with that, for Dan, this is Chris Vannini, and have a good day, everybody.
See ya.